The Health Fix podcast teaches you how to take charge of your health naturally by giving you the information you need to elevate your health.
Hello there, health junkies. Welcome to another episode of The Health Fix. I'm your host, Dr. Krause, and today I have Dr. J. Dunn on. She's a chiropractic physician who's certified in functional medicine. She's an author and an internationally known lecturer on genetics and nutrition. We're going to be talking all about that today. So after years of not finding answers to her struggle with chronic fatigue and depression, she discovered, you know what? She's got to figure out what the root cause is. And you guys know that I am all about that. And she connected genetics to the root cause. So of course, that's why we are talking about it today. And for the last 6 years, she has been mapping genes related to brain chemistry to help her patients and to teach others that are seeing patients just like myself to help theirs. So Dr. Dunn and her team have identified genetic patterns that contribute to conditions associated with mental and emotional health. And she has the MyHappyGenes, which I love that name, by the way, company. And what it is the MyHappyGenes testing kit. And she's able to analyze over 400 specific genes in this test kit. Like, whoa, crazy stuff. We're going to be talking about it all about today. Dr. Dunn, thank you for coming on and chatting with me on The Health Fix.
Thank you for the invite, Janine. It's great to be here. I appreciate it.
So I surveyed some folks, so I've got some questions for you, but I think because I always start off podcasts with the story, I like to focus on stories. You've have a long history, it sounds like, from looking at your information of battling with depression and trying to find some solutions with that and chronic fatigue. And this is very common. I'd say probably every week I have folks walking in with chronic fatigue and depression together, and they're struggling. They're wondering, what can I do? What can I, I've tried everything, doc, I'm at my wit's end. What the heck do I do? So tell us a little bit about your journey and how you came to working and creating the MyHappyGenes kits.
Oh, good question. And I think the majority of healthcare practitioners come to natural healing kind of looking for their own health answers, and as did I. And, I had been practicing, and that's what originally got me into natural healing. I was actually a kinesiologist before I became a chiropractor, and then on to functional medicine, et cetera. But after 30 years of practicing, I was still personally struggling from chronic fatigue syndrome and lifelong depression. And, it was kind of like, a lot of practitioners don't talk about it because they're sort of embarrassed that they haven't fixed their own issues, and here they are giving advice to their patients, and they're going, yeah, well, sort of in the back of their mind going, well, maybe there's something missing. And, I also had some patients. I had a really successful practice in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and, people would come from all over the country and sometimes outside of the country to see me. And so it was, I had some really good answers. Well, I did chiropractic and nutrition and emotional work and functional medicine. And I had a lot of tools in my bag, but couldn't fix my issues. But also there were some patients where I couldn't get anywhere with them, no matter what I did. all the tools that I had, they often wouldn't respond. And I was like, what is missing? There's got to be a missing piece. And like you, always looking for that missing piece. What is going on there? What is the true cause? And I started hearing this word methylation, and maybe you've heard that word being thrown around the natural healthcare world. And this was about 6-7 years ago when it was just first starting to get some legs. And I was like, methylation, I don't even know what that is. And so I started Googling it, and I saw this video by a guy named Rich von Konynenberg, and I watched it, and it was him giving a lecture about methylation and genetic variants and how they contribute to chronic fatigue syndrome and myalgic encephalitis. And I was just like, I just stood there with my mouth open, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the answer. I know it is. It's like when you get goosebumps and you're on the right track. It's like, oh my gosh. And so I started jumping into looking at methylation and genetic variants, and I got my genes tested, did the 23andMe thing, and got the raw data, behind the scenes, not the ancestry stuff. There's actually raw DNA data behind the scenes that you can get. And then plugged that into one of the early websites, which was Genetic Genie, which gave us like 30 genes. Genetic Genie?
Oh, yeah. I actually still use it. I still use it to this day. Because it's a decent resource and kind of gives the core stuff for folks just to let's scratch the surface. And if folks want to pay a little bit more, then we could do some of the other upgrades.
Yeah, it's free, right? Still,
Yeah.
it was back then. Okay. Yeah. So it gives you 30 genes, and it was like, oh, what is this? And so one of the genes on there got my particular interest, and it was the vitamin D receptor, the VDR. And I was homozygous for that. And so I started Googling, what's the VDR? What does it do? And here was the other mystery. This was my father died when he was 55 of lung cancer. And that wasn't the mystery. He did everything to get lung cancer. He's smoking and drinking and not eating right and stressing and all the things you do. But his best friend did the exact same things and lived another 30 years. I know that because he married my mom after my dad died. So it was like I got to see this, 50-year-long experiment go on with, and you've probably seen it too in your practice, like people that do everything right, yet they're sick, or other people that do everything wrong, then they're fine. It's like such a mystery. And that to me was like, there's got to be genetics. And we had parked that over to the side going, it's got to be genetics, but what I found was we can now get in there and we can find out what exactly in the genetics, kind of leads to that sort of thing. Well, when I looked at the vitamin D receptor, it said a higher risk of getting lung cancer when you smoke,
Oh, wow.
And I went, oh, that's it. And then I started looking at how the vitamin D receptor affects your immune system and your ability to fight off infection, especially chronic infection like an Epstein-Barr virus, that can lead to chronic fatigue syndrome. And then also how it turns on other genes that make serotonin and dopamine. Wow. And I went, this sounds very much like it might be my issue. Well, here's the thing. As a kinesiologist and functional medicine practitioner, I would get people's blood work done and often see low vitamin D. And I would think, okay, we need to give this person vitamin D. Well, in a lot of cases, it didn't work. You could give them all kinds of vitamin D and they couldn't absorb it because, as it turns out, they don't make the vitamin D receptor correctly because of a genetic variant. And that was the mystery solved there too.
Oh, wow.
So I started to look at the vitamin D receptor and how it worked. What are the cofactors that you need to help the body make up for this genetic variant? And that was a question that you asked, kind of before we went on, is like, can your genes change?
Yeah.
No, you can't, but you can change the expression of them. So there are ways to upregulate your ability to absorb vitamin D. And we know how important vitamin D is in everything, in so many pieces of our health. So if you think about it this way, like here's the vitamin D receptor and D is trying to get in there and it can't. Yeah. You get the cofactors, the right cofactors, and it'll open up that receptor. Vitamin D can get in. So, and that's what I found. And that's what we found with a huge portion of the genes that we were looking at is they just needed cofactors or coenzymes to make them work better, to make up for the fact that you inherited a genetic variant there. So we started looking at health that way. And, with the vitamin D receptor, it was A and K2 that actually open up that receptor and let D in. And when I did that, my depression was gone. It was just gone after 50 some years of working on, I'm 60 now, but it had been 55 years of depression.
Wow. Gone.
And I went, I think this is happiness. I think I've never felt it. It was like, oh my gosh, I think I've heard about it.
I've been told about it and I've tried everything, but
yeah. But when you feel it for the first time, you go, oh, that's what they were talking about. I'm sure you have moments of happiness and, maybe some people can relate to this. Like, yeah, I think that makes sense to me. And then I started trying this on my patients. I started working not just with brain chemistry, but with all kinds of health conditions and firing up these enzymes that they've inherited that don't work correctly. And we give them the cofactor or the coenzyme for it. And they started working correctly. So the body started to do what it should do naturally, which is like make energy, detox, make brain chemicals, and all the things that the body should do naturally, but have been inhibited from doing because of these genetic variants. That makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's really cool. I think it's really cool. I think a lot of people might be listening right now, and maybe some folks understand coenzymes and understand what that means and cofactors. But I would love for you to kind of give a little breakdown on what a coenzyme is and what a cofactor is, just to give a little bit more detail so we can kind of set the stage for talking in a little bit more detail when we start jumping into how the MyHappyGenes kit works, but also how it's tested, because that was another big question that I had from folks that I wanted to make sure we talk about.
Yeah, so coenzymes are vitamins and cofactors are minerals. So it's like we go back to the basics of what minerals and vitamins your body actually needs in the right amounts and in the right forms. And that was the key. It isn't like, oh, just take a multivitamin and your body will flush out everything it doesn't need. It doesn't really work that way. In fact, some vitamins, some minerals can send your body in the wrong direction for your genes. And so getting precise, precision nutrients designed around your genetics is the key. And that's my elevator speech when people say, what do you do? And it's like, oh, I do genetic testing. And then we design a multiple vitamin around your genetics. We design, nutrients specific in the right forms and the right amounts for you, and the right diet and the right lifestyles for you, because that, as you know, it's so individual, and it can be there are genetic variants that can show you which diet is best for you and which diet isn't. Here's an example: the lactose enzyme or the lactose molecule needs lactase to break it down, and some people genetically don't make lactase. Mm-hmm. So in that case, avoiding dairy products probably a good idea. That's the simple version of it. But there are other things like that, like gluten and intermittent fasting, and whether proteins, carbohydrates, or fats are best for you. Same things. We're looking at, do you have the right enzymes? Number one, have you inherited the right enzymes to break down that particular food? I find a lot of issues with fats, and a lot of people are on the keto diet thinking that's the good way to go. And for them, genetically, not a good idea. So we're just so individual. And that was the take home, was like, wow, that was interesting. I was doing, for many years, I did a low carb, high protein diet, thinking, I read the book on that many years ago, and come to find out with my genetics, I'm better on a higher complex carb, lower fat, lower protein. That's better for my genetics. It was stunning to me when I did that. It was like,
yeah, it's shocking, right? I have the same thing. I tried keto. I felt horrible. I did the low protein or high protein, low carb thing for a long time. Crashed my adrenal, stopped my period, really crashed myself. And it was like, well, my body looks great, but I feel like crap. And all my metabolic markers show that I'm trashed. So, these are real things. Now, I have interviewed some folks that have genetic tests like the Genopalette and folks in that nature. But what I found about their results, and this is where I'm thinking that you guys stand out a little bit differently, is that we'll get the results and it'll give percentages of what you eat, and it'll give you guidelines of what to supplement with. And then you're left with, okay, how do I figure out these percentages in terms of a diet? And how do I figure out, really, is that amount of nutrient right for me? So where do you guys stand in terms of difference from the Genopalette breakdown to what you guys are doing? Because it sounds like you're giving individualized care based on or advice based on your lab results. Because I looked at the lab results and they looked very, like generals. And then I'm guessing people have the ability to sign up to work with you or other practitioners that are using your test kits to kind of dial it in a little more.
Yeah. And, this, we struggle a lot with, putting all of this information in the hands of the consumer. Sure. Because, I'm very passionate about people learning about their own health and taking health into their own hands. But there are some people, especially with brain chemistry issues, where if we start upregulating their production of serotonin and they're already on an SSRI, it can create some pretty nasty problems. So there were liability issues there. And then there were issues about, I really think these people need to be in the hands of a practitioner. So we give them, you can get the mood and personality report and do a lot of research. You can find out a lot about yourself. That's number one, is understanding, where your genetic variants are and what your tendencies are. And that to me was huge, because it gave me a great deal of compassion for myself for struggling with depression my entire life, because it's something I beat myself up about. And I imagine a lot of people do too. Yeah. And then that's step one, is learning, all about yourself and your tendencies and your personality. You can do that, a ton of that, in the mood and personality report. The second report, we also wanted to make available to the general public, which is the diet and lifestyle. So you can just start I wanted to give people a place to, okay, what do I do about this? It is, to be truthful, a little vague. It'll say, your percentage for protein is 20%, your percentage for fats is 30, and your percentage for carbohydrates is 40. So you tailor your diet to that 40, 30, 20. And that doesn't add up to 100. The other 10 is candy.
I can never get them to add up anyway. When I do it with patients, I'm like, yeah, never mind. We're just going to tweak it. But yes, it's funny how you don't get it. But we get the idea. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, it makes sense that we should have a percentage. I just think that's where a lot of people's minds get to the point where it's like, percentage. Okay, I'm done. I give up.
Yeah.
And so
True.
The point being, like you're saying, it's good to get this information and learn about yourself, but you need a guide. You need someone to help you to put it together.
Right. As you know, and you wouldn't treat off a blood work. You wouldn't treat off an x-ray. So this is information. And then the next step, there are 3 more tests that are 3 more reports that go to your physician, whoever you're working with, a licensed healthcare provider. One is called MyHappyGenes, and it talks all about like your risk of cardiovascular disease, autoimmune, all the like respiratory, all the different systems and your particular genetic susceptibility to those. And it gives the physician some blood work recommendations. So we're analyzing almost 500 genes at this point. We keep growing because I'm adding more genes in there on a regular basis. But it'll show you, for this patient, let's say you're working on somebody with an autoimmune situation. You go and you look at the list of genes that are under autoimmune, and you can look at them individually on the report. And then it'll tell you, this is the blood work that you need to look at for this particular patient. So it's a little more medical oriented. The next report is a biochemistry report. It shows you like which pathway is more likely to be a problem. Is it the Krebs cycle? Is it, where we make energy? Or is it the detoxification pathways? Is it the brain chemistry pathways? Is it histamine? Is it, those methylation pathways? So it gives you a heads up of where their most challenging area is going to be for your patient. And then the last one is a supplement recommendation, but it's based on a questionnaire. So your patient, I want to see what's expressing, because just because you have a gene doesn't necessarily mean it's going to express in you. Maybe your lifestyle and diet and supplementation and things you're already doing has balanced out that genetic tendency. And so the questionnaire will tell us, look, she's got a vitamin D receptor homozygous, which means that, both the genes you got from mom and dad are a variation from normal. And she's expressing symptoms of chronic infection. Oh, okay. This is a no-brainer. This person is expressing the vitamin D receptor. And then the program will spit out a supplement recommendation based on a triangulation of your genes, symptoms, and then the biochemistry. So it's a complex algorithm that we've designed that's real different than GenoPalette, that's different than genomemind. It's different than anything out there that I've seen. So then you, as a practitioner, you have a list of supplements that you can look at and go, this is recommending vitamin K, but my patient is on a blood thinner. I can't do this. So it's going to take you're looking at it too and getting your 2 cents in there and making sure that your patient matches up with what the report is saying to do. So I think that piece is important for the patient to be under the care of somebody who can look at that and go, no, you don't want to do vitamin K when you're on a blood thinner. So.
No, that's awesome. Plus, I like the idea of the computer algorithm to kind of take in that information and give us a little bit more detail, because as practitioners, sometimes with genetics, and I'll be honest, sometimes my head just starts to spin when we get to complex, cases where, we've got MTHFR, so methylation defects for the folks that are listening here. So a lot of people have heard of MTHFR. This has to do with B12, has to do with folate. And then we've got COMT, and then we got MAO, and then we've got, so then when we have all these things and my mind's going like, I don't even know where to begin.
I know.
It's really useful. Now, is this report included with the MyHappyGenes kit, or is this an add-on type of report?
It's an add-on because you have options. Do you just want to buy the MyHappyGenes mood and personality report, or do you want to buy it and the diet report, or do you want to buy the whole package? So we had to separate them out so that you have some options there.
Yeah. Now you were saying, but I also read, is that the mood report, the mood and personality report, can be attached to 23andMe. Is this correct? Is this the one that can be attached to that? So if someone has already had genetic testing through 23andMe, they can attach that as well.
Yeah. So that's where we started, was using 23andMe and Ancestry data. And then we found that there were a lot of genes missing. And so that's why we went to our own private lab, among other reasons, which we were talking about earlier. But Ancestry only gives us about 50% of the info, and Ancestry gives us a tiny bit more, not much. So we were missing a lot of data, and but you can run it. Yes, you can. So if you've already got Ancestry and 23andMe, it's $49 to the consumer, and then if you wanted to be a practitioner, it'd be a cheaper price to you. Then you can do it for your patients. But so then we thought, well, a couple of reasons. One is 23andMe and Ancestry sell your data. Not super happy about that. They sell it to pharmaceutical companies and whoever wants to pay enough money to get your information. I wasn't okay with that. And so that was the second reason why we decided to use our own private lab. The third being the spit, the little tube that you spit in for saliva is really hard. It's hard for babies and it's hard for older adults to get that much saliva out. And
you feel like my patients say it's like a full-time job. They're like, oh my God, I spent all day spitting. Like it just kept going.
It sounds so easy, but it takes a long time to get that. Yeah, that saliva in there.
So your tubes are smaller.
Yeah, we don't do saliva. We do a swab.
It's swab based. Okay.
Yeah. So here's our little, upside down. There's our little MyHappyGenes.
There we go.
And so you just swab. And then it's only tracked by the barcode. Can you see the barcode there?
I can see the barcode. Got it.
So never has your name on it. So the sample goes to the lab with only a number and comes back to us with only a number. And so if you want to sign up, through our site, you just put in a name. You put in Mickey Mouse or whatever you want to put in there to protect your privacy. And then the sample is destroyed after 30 days. So it's like very, very secure, never attached to a name. There's no way they can track you on that.
Wow. Now, I think a lot of people were wondering, and I kind of had some questions from my group about what happens when your swab gets there into the lab. How does that swab turn into all kinds of genetic data? What's the process with the computer, system in terms of the lab computer systems?
Well, gosh, I can't really speak to you on that. I know that they have their little machines that kind of analyze the DNA and then spit out this information. I don't have a ton of knowledge about that end of it, but we do get back, I don't know if you've seen the raw data that comes from 23andMe and Ancestry.
Yeah.
It's a lot of RSID. It's a lot of information. I've had patients print out the whole thing and bring it in going, here's, I was like, oh my God.
And we're like, oh yeah, I've had that happen too. And we're like, okay, we got to fix that. Cause I don't know. Well, actually it's more like, I do not have the time to go through every single one of the RSIDs on those. Ooh, no,
it doesn't mean anything to me. I mean, for us, it's 376,000 SNPs that we're pulling from. We're pulling out of those SNPs. We're pulling almost 500, but I have the ability to pull from that whole batch of data to get more information. That's why we can add genes to our algorithm very easily. And my software team is incredible. They created this agile system where I can add genes in there, and I get doctors all the time going, hey, could we test for the BRCA gene, and add that in there? It's like, oh, sure. Yeah, let's put it in.
Where's the lab located? Just out of curiosity, because I'm just a curious person.
They're in Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah, Atlanta, Georgia.
Cool.
So we were excited about having more control over it and being able to get the genes that we wanted into the, into their array, what they call their array, and have so much more information than 23andMe and Ancestry available. And we will be continually upgrading it because genetic data, every day there's thousands of studies being done. And so it's not done yet. There's nothing final about the information coming out about genetics. It's always probably going to be forever. I mean, because there's 6 billion genes. 6 billion SNPs, possible out of 20 to 25,000 genes that we have. each base pair or each gene can be millions of base pairs long. And so the potential for SNPs there is pretty outrageously big. It's a big number.
It's amazing. It's amazing what we can do. I mean, now and then, where we're headed, holy cow, I imagine that we can scan the whole body, and I'm imagining some sci-fi things where we're in a tube and the saliva comes out, it goes into a little thing and the tube scans us. And then we have like a whole report of what do we do next?
Yeah, I think that's coming for sure. Yeah.
I'm excited about it. I'm excited about looking to see where that goes. Now, we were talking before the podcast, someone had asked me about your testing compared to genomimind, because I know that a lot of folks, genomimind's been around a long time. And in my mind, it's probably getting antiquated because I haven't seen updates as much to it. But how would someone who's kind of trying to navigate their own mental health and that's kind of exploring and dabbling, but maybe trying to find a doc that can help them, how could they explain to maybe a psychiatrist, someone and of that level, that like the difference between MyHappyGenes and genomimind?
That's a really good question, because I've been looking at them going, are they a competitor or are they not a competitor? And I've actually become friends with the owners, and we're having a little conversation back and forth. And I think there's a space for both of us. The genomimind only analyzes about 38 genes, right? And they're looking at just a few that affect serotonin and dopamine levels, and then a few that look at the breakdown of pharmaceuticals. So they're really looking at pharmaceuticals. So for those people that have severe mental health issues, it's a better way to target their what do you call it? The brain chemistry drugs. I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, no, like the pharmaco, interaction with the brain. Right. So I would be thinking, okay, so now that I understand a little bit more about what what MyHappyGenes does, I'm like, maybe both of them together, because if someone has, unfortunately, I say unfortunately, because I, of course, live in the land of wanting to do things without, pharmaceuticals, but I know in the case that sometimes you have to. There's no way around it. Right. And so I'm thinking pairing both of them together, because now you can do the lifestyle and you can dial in what pharmaceuticals are going to work best for you.
Yeah. And, here's the thing is, we're looking at pathways. How does your body make dopamine, and how does your body make serotonin, and how does it break it down? And you mentioned a couple, the COMT and the MAO, that break down those things. So let's say you have a patient that is on an SSRI. Now their serotonin levels are high, and then you start making their body make more serotonin. Now they've gone too high and they have an MAO or a COMT and they can't break it down. That's a scenario where they could get into a lot of trouble. So if they're on an SSRI and they're working with a psychiatrist or whoever prescribed it to them, they can let them know, hey, I'm working with MyHappyGenes. We're working on my underlying reasons why I was depressed in the first place, or why my body wasn't making serotonin. Can you keep an eye on my levels and adjust my medication for me as I work on the underlying causes? And I think that's, where you and I are in alignment there. I'd rather get to the underlying causes and do it naturally. And the cool thing is we can understand, that vitamin D receptor, for instance, in my case, I wasn't absorbing vitamin D, and that vitamin D is critical for the body to turn tyrosine into dopamine and to turn tryptophan into serotonin. So the whole pathway was blocked because of genetics. And then when I turned on the vitamin D receptor, suddenly my body knows how to make serotonin and dopamine, and I don't have to take a drug to do that. And that's the message that we have that's very different than genomimind. And, again, I applaud them, and I think they're doing a good service in trying to get, the pharmaceuticals to be precise for your genes. And that's fantastic. But we're looking at the other end of it. Why was the body not doing that in the first place? And how do we help the body do that? And it's fairly simple. So we look at interactions, the vitamin D receptor, how does it affect the function of the COMT and the MAO genes? So we look at them all together. So we're looking at biochemistry. We're looking at the biochemistry behind these pathways rather than, you have one gene, take this supplement. And that's what we found with a lot of the genetic companies is, you have an MAO, take this supplement. You have a COMT, take this. And it was just confusing because I would get my report from these, I've tried every company that I could try, and it would say, take methylfolate. And then further on down the report, say, never take methylfolate. It's like,
right. Yeah.
That's what, now I'm confused.
Yeah, no, I've had patients be like, what in the world? Like I read it. So I bought it and then I read further and then I didn't need it. And then I need hydroxyl B12. Like, and next thing you know, you're like head spinning. And I mean, it happens to me too as a practitioner, because you're like, okay, obviously we need to go further back into biochemistry, like you said. Right. And I think that's the key here. And that's where I like what you're doing, because it's helping folks to get even further dialed in versus just do this and then nothing happens. And then you go, oh, well, it doesn't work. Or,
right.
Oh, it's, I'm can't be fixed. That's another big thing that I hear a lot with folks. And it's like, oh, it's not that you can't be fixed. We haven't found the right pathway and the right, component that's off.
Right. Yeah. And, the list of supplements for some of those people, it gets to be really long, 30, 40 supplements. And are you kidding? I look at that and I go, oh my God, they're throwing this pathway off balance when they're throwing this way in balance. They don't understand the relationship of those pathways. And that's, again, one of the big differences in our company is we look at the biochemical pathways that you're messing with. Let's say B6, for instance. If you take B6, it's going to upregulate a gene called the CBS gene, and it's going to cause your body to dump heavy metals and toxins and pesticides and sulfurs. And then if you have a sulfur transferase enzyme that can't get rid of those sulfurs you just created a world of hurt. But the MAO gene requires a B6. So what do you do? And so our calculation takes all of that into account and says, okay, well, you have this gene and this gene. So B6 is not a good idea because you're going to send this pathway the wrong way. And we have other ways to get that pathway balanced. So that it's that understanding of what you're doing with a specific nutrient and why you take it for this person, versus another person. So our list of supplements is not very long. It ends up being about 10 to 15 supplements, mm-hmm. and they're precision. They're like, okay, vitamin A, K, and D, hydroxyl B12, not methyl B12, because it's going to send you in the wrong way. This mineral, it's just exact for your genes. And so it's a big difference from a lot of companies who just like throw a bunch of nutrients at you and don't understand the repercussions down the line of taking that supplement. That
is so huge. I mean, it takes the headache out of the sleuthing out for docs like me, but also for patients. Now, would you tell folks a little bit, since I'm going to need us to wrap up here because I got to go see patients today. How can folks find you? How can they find the MyHappyGenes kit? Because I'm guessing it's a website, myhappygenes.com, I think is where I found you. Right. And then what would they be looking at, for a test kit, and then also all of the add-ons? Because I think at this point, a lot of folks are going, I need that questionnaire and the analysis, because that's where I'd be signing up for, in this case, and be signing my patients up for. So tell us a little bit about where we can find you online, where we can interact on Instagram, and then also what are folks looking at for an investment in their health to get the information they need to get their mind right?
Good questions. So if you go to myhappygenes.com, that's our main website, and you can purchase the DNA kit there. You have to get the DNA kit first and wait for the data to come back. And we're looking at a turnaround of 2 to 3 weeks. Wow. So it's a little faster than, we're trying to make it as fast as possible. It's a little faster than 23andMe and Ancestry. If you want to learn more, myhappygenes.info, there's a free ebook that you can download that kind of tells you more about it there. And then for your listeners, I'll give them a $50 discount. I'll make a special code and we'll call it the Health Fix 50?
Sure.
Health Fix 50. Okay.
There you go, folks. Write it down. Health Fix 50. I'll put it in the show notes too at drjkraussnd.com.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
I'll put it in my show notes too. So we'll have it out there. So if folks didn't catch it right now, we'll get it there.
And then if you're a practitioner, there is a place on there. If you scroll down and it says, are you a practitioner? Click here and it'll take you to the practitioner site and tell you how to become a MyHappyGenes practitioner. You just have to be licensed. And then there's no cost to it. You just get wholesale pricing, and you can work with your patients on that as well.
Excellent. Excellent. Wow. Great info today, Jay. I appreciate it. Oh, my goodness. I know that this is going to help a lot of people, because the biggest issue that I have in my office and what people come to me with all their SNPs and everything they've brought of the raw data is, what do I do with this? How do I make it applicable to me? And how do I not mess myself up? And you've got all of that covered. So thank you for putting together such a great product. All of us appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm so passionate about people being helped the same way I got helped, and there's a lot of people struggling, especially kind of in the middle ground of, I don't want to go on some pharmaceutical medication for this. And, and everything I've tried doesn't seem to work, and they struggle, and they just sort of think that they're broken, and, they'll always be that way. And I have a lot of compassion for that. We call it genetic compassion, but thank you so much for getting the word out, Janine. I really appreciate it.
Well, we will do another one, because I'm going to do a test, and I like to do tests and then have a follow-up where we go through stuff and kind of help cool down. So I am looking forward to chatting with you again here soon. So thanks, Dr. Jay Dunn. I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you, Janine.
Hey, Health Junkies, I hope you enjoyed my podcast. If you want to continue the conversation based on what topic I'm talking about at any given time on the Health Fix podcast, head over to my Facebook group, Find Your Health Fix. It's where we are talking about what's going on in health, what I'm talking about in the podcast, and I love to answer questions there. So come hang out and join the conversation. And by the way, right now I have a free Manage Your Stress Naturally course that you can grab on my website at drjkrausend.com, because so many people are stressed out right now, and really it has to do with the basics, your routines and simple habits that are messing you up. So head on over to drjkrausend.com and go check out my free course on managing stress naturally. All right, folks, have a great day, whatever you're doing.
Subscribe, rate, and share info.